Hello and welcome back to Leisha Online. My name's Leisha Toy, and this is a space where I meet people from all walks of life who tell me their stories. I chat to people from charities to TV producers, and a lot of the time we discuss different issues through the lens of the arts. So I really hope that you enjoy. Welcome back to the Leisha Online podcast. Thank you so much, Dave, for coming in today and speaking with me. I'm really looking forward to chatting with you.
Yes, thanks for having me on your podcast, Lisa.
Thank you so much. And for anybody who doesn't know you or doesn't know Madlug, would you like to just introduce yourself to the podcast?
Yes, so my name's Dave Linton, and I'm the founder of Madlug, which stands for Make a Difference Luggage, and simply we're trying to remove bin bags from the care system.
And I have heard your story. I know you started in 2015, and I thought it was really compelling what you said. I heard on a podcast you saying, I told my wife, I've got £500 to start this, but I will do anything to make it work. I'll take up extra shifts. Like, tell me a little bit about that and why you made that decision.
Well, it was simply is that I had no background in business, no background. I was a youth worker for 22 years, and it was a typical thing when you get asked to start a business, or you get something comes an idea, you think, well, someday, but I'll get the qualifications, I'll have more space, I'll have more money, and so forth. But for some reason, I was so compelled to fix the problem that I just knew that I would have the energy to go and work 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 jobs if needed to do it. So that was the commitment. So I needed to know how much we needed, and then I would commit to that.
Yeah, and you spoke a bit about having kind of like a download of this idea. I've heard a little bit about people having these kind of downloads. Like, I think it was like J.K. Rowling or something had the download of an idea of Harry Potter. But I wanted to ask you a bit about that, about how did that idea come to you? Were you just sitting down, or did it just come to you, or?
So the idea came, I was at a training course. My wife and I are adoptive parents. We had done some short break or respite foster care. We were looking to do more foster and had to go and do a training course to do that. And there was a video showing on the 4th week of that training of a young girl sitting in a wheelchair, teenager, and she said, when we move, the local trusts or local authorities don't give us suitcases. Sometimes foster carers loan us a suitcase, but more often our belongings are moved in black plastic bin bags and we lose our dignity. And that broke my heart. And that's what was so driven. So it was the reflecting on that moment of doing something about it, having checked all of the different things that could have been done to a set of charity, to a set of business. How do I fix this problem? What's the size of the problem? That led me to just then reflecting all the time, and I journaled. And it was one of those things where all the stuff, I don't think you just come and arrive with this download, but it collates everything from life
Clarity, yeah.
into that place. So all the things you think were irrelevant starts to become relevant and creates a clarity and downloads it in a clarity and a clear way to fix the problem. And that's what happened. Over a few days I was just journaling and started to get ideas, started to just couldn't stop thinking, and it was just like this pouring down of idea.
Yeah. And then with that girl, and I mean, I've actually like listened to a testimony as well on your website, but from now you've I think it was 102,000 bags that you've
120,000.
120 now.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. And like, how does that feel? Have you kind of heard stories of people who that's helped?
Absolutely. And we hear stories all the time. We're not great at telling those stories because we don't want to use children, young people, or people with lived experience to promote what we're doing. We want to just help them. That's our thing, as the gift of. So we hear stories all the time. The picture, I was with a group of young people last night sharing the story, and what I heard or what I said to them was this idea of, imagine Wembley Stadium. Imagine every seat in Wembley Stadium filled. Imagine every bit of grass seated. And 20,000 people standing outside waiting to get in with no seats. That's how many children have been helped from that £500.
That's amazing.
Doing business, making profit, giving bags to kids.
And what does it look like? What you actually give to the kids? Is it a travel bag? Is it similar to the ones that you sell, or is it a bit different?
No, we made we would probably a nicer story for the consumer if we sold every suitcase you get a suitcase, every bag you get a backpack. but we're very clear. We want to fix the problem of bin
Practical.
bags.
Yeah.
We're that's why we exist.
Yeah.
We asked care experienced young people when we were setting up, when is bin bags used, and what is the fix to that? What is the need? They said space is an issue, often space to have it in a social worker's car. They said that they often had sock drawers, nothing more to put luggage in. And they loved this idea of value, worth, dignity on the bags, but they didn't want Madlug for stigma. So in some ways, we didn't want them to, or they didn't want to have Madlug as a brand all over their bags to say, "Oh, we're kids in care." So we created this thing like the pack away travel bag. It's like a pack in a Mac in a sack type thing,
Yeah.
and opens up into a 35-litre bag.
Oh, wow.
Whenever it's opened up, it holds 20 bags folded.
Yeah.
So suddenly you've got one gym bag, travel bag, in the back of a social worker's car, in a foster carer's home, wherever there's a need for bags, and it's helping one child with lots of stuff or 20 children with little stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that sounds incredible. And I actually have a close friend of mine grew up in foster care most of her life, and she kind of told me about those stories of, you know, having to leave really abruptly. And I think what you're doing is amazing. And you're such a good speaker as well. Like you've done a few podcasts. I was even saying, I'm trying to think of different questions to ask you. But even, you know, developing those kind of leadership skills and speaking and being you are the face of the brand as well. So tell me about that. Is it pressurizing?
I think what happens when you know what your call is, and for me the call is to end bin bags in the care system to promote the value, worth, dignity of children in care. There comes a confidence with that. So I'm not trying to get credit or to build worth out of my own self-worth out of my identity around that. So there's a real sense of there's a problem to fix. I'm secure in that. I'm going to do it. And then it's the kind of collating everything of your past. So you take in the skills you've learned in jobs. So a youth worker for 22 years, I learned how to communicate to young people. I learned how to communicate to young people in youth centres who were on the edge. So I was with a group of young people last night through Education Authority. I was able to communicate with them. I was able to hold that crowd by communicating in a way that a lot of people can't. But I also then have learned how to present and train teams, which allows me then to be able to speak on platforms and do that. And I've just learned how to do that. And it's probably the part in my skill set that is my strength.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty clear on what I'm not good at, and I get either skills to learn it or I bring people around me who know it.
And tell me about the youth work then. I'm very interested, and I would know quite a few people in that kind of industry, and I worked a little bit myself in the charity sector, so I'm really interested to hear about your background in that. And 22 years is a long time.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I mean, I'm pretty secure in who I am. I'm not driven for wealth or stuff or anything. I've been one of these people that's pretty, you know, in the moment. Am I in the right place? Am I doing what I'm meant to be doing? And I will always have enough.
Yeah.
And so for me, youth work was in that place of I probably got into it because youth workers were a key part of my own life. So I've shared the story a few times where, you know, my dad died when I was 5. I had significant adults around me, but there was youth leaders in things like Boys Brigade and things like that came alongside, and they said they looked out for me, they supported me. Some of them took me windsurfing whenever I was the wee guy and they had the cars. And that was really significant. And that created in me, from a place of the trauma of being a young boy with no dad figure around, there was something modeled of being cared for. And I, as a response to that, I felt that if I wasn't even a felt like, it was as a response that my life then became, I wanted to help people.
Yeah.
I wanted to go, and it was always the underdog.
Yeah.
So that's probably took me into youth work. 22 years. I thought I was going to retire as a youth worker. I had no desire to do it for a time. It wasn't a temporary thing. And in fact, leaving youth work was a hard thing.
I'm sure it was.
To do Madlug.
Yeah. And having those kind of connections in youth work, and everyone knows everybody in that sector. And tell me a bit about that. Like, what was it like growing up in Belfast at that time?
So I grew up just down the road in Newton Abbey, and it was, it was in the heart of the Troubles and stuff. And when my dad died, we lived in a quite comfortable area, but it put us into a place of poverty. So it was significant adults that kept supported my mum. In many ways, if she hadn't have had the support and the poverty that was around, it might have meant that we could have ended up in care. There was social workers involved. There was all of that stuff. But I had a really good support network. My mum had a good support network. She then started to thrive. She modeled something to me of what inspires me still today, to be honest, in that she cared for people even when she could have been the victim.
Yeah.
And
I was going to say that, like, you could have chosen at that point, maybe not to take that path and go into youth work. So it just shows.
Well, it's all about modeling. I think things are caught rather than taught.
Yeah.
And I caught something from my mum. I caught something from those significant adults who became non-blood related aunts and uncles.
Yeah. People you look up to.
Now it's some of them were like fathers to me. It took me out walking their dogs, and we watched Rambo videos together, and all of the stuff that you do. That for me was really significant. And then to watch my mum go from having no job, because in those days when my dad passed away, there was only him worked. There was no insurances, and she didn't drive, and there was this and two kids and to provide for. So to see her learn how to drive, get a job, and then when she passed away, she had actually retired just before that as a auxiliary nurse, but she was one of the founding members of Unison union for the Northern Trust.
Oh,
and
wow.
And then she was seconded full time in that. So I'm really not a union person, but something was modeled of coming home at night and sometimes seeing people who she was fighting and standing for, keeping their jobs, going to directors and saying, no, give them another chance, and seeing alcoholics sitting at our dinner table when I was coming home as an adult from work. There was something that was caught from that.
Yeah.
And now I'm in that place. It feels actually really natural rather than something I'm just a duty.
Yeah. Sounds like you had a beautiful community around you in that time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then, so what was your first job then in youth work?
So I ended up in youth work because one of the things was I was never great at school, and part of that is I've found out I've been dyslexic. Yeah. But for me, school was I had a great drive, but I just didn't work in school. Yeah. I didn't understand. I couldn't grasp it. Exams were hard.
I can't imagine how difficult that was.
There was no support. If it was today, I probably would have a degree and all of that stuff. Yeah. But in those days, there wasn't the support, and but I had this real ambition to be. I was creative, not knowing the words and terminology then. Yeah. So entrepreneurial and that creativity that's there. I was basically had this dream to be an architect, but I knew I didn't have the qualifications or the ability to have the qualifications. So I left school at 16 and I talked my way into an architectural technician's draftsman's role type thing. And I ended up in a course, and I was still struggling in that course, to be honest. 2 years into that job, I was about 6 months from completing my qualifications. A building recession came, and the company I was working for basically reduced the trainees. And I just was inexperienced, young, and I said, no, this isn't for me, and I didn't go back to my course. Probably the regret is I didn't finish, because it was an academic opportunity to finish something. And that led me to a few months unemployed. My family were starting to think, well, Dave's going to be signing on, no job, and I was unemployed, going and lifting my dole. And there was a job training program, £10 on your brew. And it was like, if you do this, and it was a youth work job. Yeah. And so I basically went and joined this little team, got £10 on my brew.
£10? What does that mean? £10?
£10 a week extra because I was taking on this job.
Oh, okay.
And then they paid for all my travel to it. So it was just like something that I got my £30, £40 a week unemployment benefit.
Yeah, and then
which they called brew in those days, and then £10 on it.
Right.
And then all the travel. Plus, they also put you through like OCN or equivalents in those days. And I just filled my boots with these OCNs and stuff like that. And then I got a part-time job called I can't remember the name of it, but it was like an extra. It was like a part time. It was a funded program again,
Yeah.
and I did that for a year, and then that led me into going to England, doing some qualifications, and I ended up the rest of my time in youth work related. Some was practitioner, some was consultancy work, but it was that kind of youth work world. It's where I learned all my leadership
It was
stuff.
obviously meant to be then.
100%.
Yeah. And I mean, I think if you're looking back on if you did end up doing the architecture, you'd have looked back and had a very different career. But now, like, I mean, the people you've met and the things you've achieved.
Well, I think I'm still doing architecture. I'm just doing a bit more cultural architecture.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So, creating culture, shaping landscape, doing that stuff around the community work, through the children in care work, being creative, all the stuff that was part of. I still absolutely love buildings. I go into cities and I'm going, wow, and looking around. But it was a change in that time as well. Probably changed me from the architecture. It was moving from the drawing of actually doing the drawings with pen on at a desk to computerized, and the art was the part I liked on it. So it was an easy. When looking back, it was the right time to swap.
Do you like art then?
I was always enjoy art. I still see creativity. I love designing stuff.
And do you design the bags then?
So I'm involved in like the products and what we do. But I would have done stuff like video. When you're a youth worker, you have your Mac and you have basically no budget, so you end up creating everything from posters through to videos. So I enjoy all that stuff.
Yeah.
I do very little of it now because my time's a bit reduced, and I've got a team of people who do that.
And now tell me about Madlug. I really have been trying to ask you really different questions, but I want to hear about this team, the team behind Madlug.
So we're extremely small, extremely lean, when we look back at what the team and we have achieved has been, it's kind of like, I think it's amazing. In fact, we've just recruited a new head of operations. First time we've brought somebody in alongside me to run the day-to-day running of Madlug, and they've come in. They've been blown away by how much we do as a team, but also as a team that there has been nobody there that has any previous corporate. Most of it's been through first jobbing.
Yeah,
it's been
quite organic.
It's been organic, and it's been learned. Now we're at a place where we're having to put a lot of standardization, and we're talking to customers different level now, which is why we've had to bring this head of operations role in. But the fact we've got there, so there's about 5 or 6 of us and a couple of freelance creative people doing marketing and so forth, and we're just on a mission to end bin bags.
And with the social media, then it was really taken off. And when you first went into it, was social media a big element of this? Did you think I need to really capitalize on this, what we have now with the apps, or was it something you didn't think about?
We still don't spend a lot of money on social media marketing in the sense of ad spend as a brand. Whenever in 2015, when I was setting it up, the Facebook Live was just coming to the forefront, and they were promoting, the algorithms were favoring Facebook Live without any money. Yeah. So if you just got up and did video and live video, you could get seen without any money.
What did you do on Facebook Live? Just anything?
So
chatting?
Facebook Live was, I'm at this event, I've met this. It was very raw. Looking back, in some ways I would love to go back to that because there's something organic about it. And you become a brand, and then there's more of that standoff and everything's about, is it good, right for the brand? Is it good? And, or you become busy in the day to day. It's like, I must do that video, and then it's a little bit more wooden compared to
I know exactly
the rawness of that. Yeah. And yet, because it's the market is so flooded, or the space is so flooded with so many people going, hi, I'm such and such, promoting everything on this. There's part of me is it doesn't cut through any longer. Yeah. So the stuff, but in the early days, I literally stood up on the first day we launched. I couldn't do a crowdfunder. So the normal thing was, let's go to do a crowdfunder, raise some money, do the products, build a business up. This was so countercultural of a youth worker with no business background, creating a brand in a country where we were importers of brands rather than exporters of brands. And if it failed when you're 42, it was like, oh, I told you so. That was never going to work. So I couldn't afford the risk of that.
Yeah.
I had to just
It had
push
to work.
through. There was no option.
So stressful.
It had to work. So for me, it was just like, hey guys, we're going live tomorrow. The Shopify store's going on. Support us. We will not ask you to be patient. It's going to take 3 to 4 weeks for you to get your bags. The reality was, we didn't have any bags. Now, I wouldn't do that now because that's illegal. You can't sell what you don't have. At that stage, as a youth worker, I knew nothing, right? So that was how I got around it.
Doesn't do it anymore.
No, we definitely everything you buy off us, we have in stock, or it's notified as pre-order. But that's how I did it. So I stood up and we're going. Unfortunately, we got enough orders to order my first batch of bags.
Yeah.
And then I didn't take a salary for 3 years, and we reinvested all the profit into increasing stock, and that was how we did it.
And then did you have to take on other work then to be able to make this work?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I took my end to youth work was I took a part-time youth work job. I moved from the full-time to part-time, thinking I could do youth work really, really easy, and didn't want to give youth work up.
Yeah.
And I went into this project that was pretty new in the sense of it needed a bit of building. And to be honest with you, it was the toughest youth work job I've ever done.
Oh, really?
Because I realised in me that I can't do two visions. So I couldn't get the energy to be visionary about this youth work project and also Madlug. And there was this drive still that Madlug was the thing. So I did it for 9 months and decided I was going to... So that was my part-time. I ended up giving it up without anything.
Yeah.
And then because Madlug was...
You could put your whole
But so what happened was one of my mentors came along to me who had been funded through a council program, like Go Succeed, but it wasn't Go Succeed. And they said, I need some mentors for social enterprise, and what you're doing, Dave, is really innovative and ahead of the game because nobody was doing what we were doing. And social enterprise was just very service orientated. And so he says, would you be a mentor? And I moved from this part-time youth work job to this job where I could work 2 to 3 days a week and get paid what I would be paid in good daily rates.
Right.
And that freed up about 3 days a week to work at Madlug for nothing.
Brilliant.
And that's how I did it. I did that for a year. In fact, not even a year. Until then, I got enough money to be able to take a little bit off. And so, my first payment out of Madlug was something like £500 a month.
Oh my God. And then who was those initial people you spoke about, like the pre-order? Was that everybody who kind of seen that on Facebook Live, or where are the customers coming from? Was it?
So they were very early adopters, Northern Ireland. You see, the early adopters who were like, some of it, to be honest, was probably out of supporting Dave because and maybe thought.
But that's good.
So there was the supporting Dave, not necessarily sure the idea, but Dave's got no job, and there's probably a wee bit of that, and then there was the because I'd been 22 years in youth work, and I'm a connector by nature. I had a huge friendship group, so I got a lot of support from that. And then it just kept going and going. And then a year or two into it, you get it recognized for, I got a call one day from in fact, it was the day I left the youth work. The last thing I was doing as a youth worker, before going into that consultancy piece, I got a phone call from a journalist of The Guardian.
Right.
Saying, you've just been selected as a new radical. And I went, one of 50 most innovative. And so that was, you can't say anything. There's going to be a whole piece put out on Sunday in the Observer, and we got listed.
And that
as
was
one
the
of the top
turnaround
50.
that they just contacted you, and then it was
just
on the
contacting
Sunday?
on Sunday, and we had a journalist I think it was the Wednesday of that week, Tuesday that week, and then we had the journalist on. They had wrote the article, interviewed me, and that was.
And what year was this?
I think that was around 2016, 2017.
Right.
And then we just kept, it was slow. And then 2018 there was a an influencer who we employed somebody to come alongside even before I started getting salary. We took somebody on to bring the bits that Dave didn't do, and
that's smart, especially in that time, because the influencer wasn't as big of a thing then.
well, but we've never, the influencer wasn't approached. It was basically an influencer. There was an influencer called Part-Time Working Mummy, and she was telling her story about care experience and domestic violence, and she was writing her book on her own story, and she had put a bit of her book on her socials. So about 70,000 people at the time following her on Insta, and she said about Black Bin Bag, and one of our customers who followed her said, have you come across Madlug?
Right.
And so she says, I'm coming to launch the book in Belfast. Would you like to come and do a stand and 5 minutes on the stage?
Yeah.
So I couldn't make it that night, believe it or not. But my colleague.
What did you have on?
I know it was just there was something else on. It was double event. So my colleague at that stage, he set up a stand, and it ran over, and he didn't get 5 minutes. And very few people talked to him on the stand and he said, all I did all night was I took drunk women to taxis. And
what?
And that was all he did that night, and thought it was a waste of time.
Yeah.
What happened was, in the middle of that, he hands the Part-Time Working Mummy bag for each of her kids.
Aww.
And we'd heard nothing. And that was June time.
Yeah.
August time, my colleague was away to England to a festival with all our stock. I was in Belfast at an event at the City Hall. I was on a train back home, and I saw the post, Part-Time Working Mummy, all her kids with our bags on it. And I was like, oh, amazing. And then next minute, ding, because at this stage, we weren't selling that much. The notifications were coming through. So I heard ding, 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 ding. And it just went on. We sold out in 10 hours. And it was just crazy. And then I had all these people volunteering. It was like a sweatshop. It was his row of just making. We had, because processes aren't there when you're just doing small orders, and that was a significant. Like we cleaned out in 10 hours. We restocked, cleaned out another 10 hours, and the tail of that was probably about 6 months. So that impacted the business for about 6 months, and it took us to a new level. And then we got a couple of other things like not Flybe, well maybe it was Flybe at the time, in their In-Flight magazine did an article on us, so we started to get seen a little bit in that. In 2018, as well, I got invited to have brunch with Richard Branson, so in London, because again being invited to do a pitching competition. And I ended up as part of the Ulster Bank, our accelerator program at the time. I got to go into London and have brunch.
Wow.
As
Have you spoken about that one before?
Well, it's just and that just opened the I took it to the next level.
What did you learn from him then? What did you think of that whole experience?
Well, he's just the real deal. What they say is never meet your heroes. That's what you generally think, if you, and like I love Richard Branson's stuff because he's dyslexic. He starts ideas and he gets good people around him to run. That's his whole model. And you're always fearful then of going to London to go, is this guy going to let us down? Is he going to be arrogant? Is he going to be dismissive? And there was six of us, and we arrived. I was a little bit nervous, probably a learning thing, and this is, I was like, oh, my hero, Richard Branson. And my wife says, look, Dave, it's just a man. It's just a human. It's just an ordinary person. There's nothing different. I ended up going in with the nerves into this fancy hotel in London, into the billiard room, which is where they were having breakfast. And this guy came over to me and he says, hi, my name's Steve, and I am the marketing director for Virgin. Nice to meet you. I love what you do. He says, and I have never ever told anybody in the corporate world this. Why I love what you do is I spent the first 5 years of my life in care. And it's something in that moment went, this is Dave from Northern Ireland, a little youth worker, totally content, helping people. And suddenly, with a little idea, £500, we've actually, somebody has been freed of holding their story in a world that Madlug is actually creating a bigger conversation than just helping
Opening
children.
the dialogue. Yeah.
And we've seen that now more and more. We've heard of teachers, like senior teachers, 60-year-old teachers, going into their staff rooms that they've been working in 20 plus years, and a staff member comes in with their Madlug and talks about children in care, and a 60-year-old teacher saying, I wish that was around when I was in care, and they'd never even known.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this little idea of a backpack
That's crazy.
funding the giving of a bag to
Yeah.
a child so the child carries a life in a bin bag.
And it's one idea and £500, and it's look at where it's gone to. But so that lunch then, what was the lunch like?
It was cool food. It was we sat and chatted. Everyone went around, and what I learned is he's the real deal.
Yeah.
And he just talked about getting the right people around you. He talked about helped us all with ideas of how we could grow our ideas. It was just like I felt like I was on a level, not in something of this superstar. It was just really, really special. And then I brought over a red duffel bag and a backpack.
Yeah.
And people have brought gifts. Now, he said at the start, or during it, he says, like, gifting's a bad idea.
Yeah.
Because it's like, it's giving money and profits away and business got to work. But I give him the bag and think, oh, that's cool. And I then heard when he had left that he walks everywhere. He doesn't get taxis. He walks the whole of London from meeting to meeting. He had left the room. He had gone to meeting, and all these little other gifts were small.
Yeah.
Like food and stuff like that, tea. And he put it into the Madlug bag and carried the Madlug bag across London. So,
wonder if there's any paparazzi pictures of that one.
So,
oh my God. And like, I think I'm just so inspired by this whole thing of like your one idea, and it's just kind of come to life. And you spoke about journaling a bit. So do you believe in visualization and that things can come into fruition? Would you be a believer in that kind of a thing?
I'm not necessarily in that clarity. I believe that we're called to things, and you just and when you follow your calling, then that's. But I'm a visual learner myself, and I'm a visual communicator.
Yeah.
So I speak a lot with my hands.
Yeah.
I when I'm talking to my team, I generally will put it in a presentation format than a written document because it's like, can you see it?
Yeah, can you see it?
Doesn't always work because sometimes people aren't visual learners, they're written learners.
Yeah.
ChatGPT is brilliant for that now because you can just go, that presentation, put it into a 5-page document. And so now I have the learners who don't learn by the visuals and somebody doing the in-between bit. So that's been a real godsend, you know.
The ChatGPT is something else. I actually love it. It's my career in TV. Sometimes you're like, you just need a little bit of inspiration. You're like, give me some good ideas, and it comes up with such random. Sometimes it's a bit like weird stuff, but it always gets you thinking, I think.
The blank sheet.
Yeah, it really is. And then I seen as well, like you're a Christian. Tell me about that, and has that motivated your journey?
Well, I mean, that's totally what is the foundation of all I do. One is that I am pretty secure that I'm created in God's image, and that gives me a security. So when I talk about the security of my call, the security of, I'm not building an identity around Madlug. I'm not building an identity around meeting Richard Branson. That is giving me a security that actually I'm here to be, in many ways, to love orphans in times of trouble, love the widows and orphans. And it says in the book of James, this is what true religion is, to love orphans and widows. And I was an orphan because an orphan is defined as someone who has lost one parent. So that is really what motivates, and to just live my life in that with that confidence. Yeah. So it's really foundational. It's foundational. It doesn't take me to a place where I would be, judgmental. In Madlug we're very, for me it's about showing who I am, being around, but being confident and secure in that. So it's a foundational part of what I do.
I was telling you before, I work in TV, and I was actually speaking to somebody. I basically work in like VTs, which is like short films in certain like live studio shows. And I was speaking to some people who set up an organization. They're quite well known, and they'd be really like God fearing, like they're Christian. And they said it's so crazy because they said what you said, which is why I asked you about it. The download of information. I'll tell you who these people are after. It was quite public. But they had this download of information. They like prayed and said like, God, tell us what, they finished university, tell us what you want us to do next. And then they got this kind of vision of what that kind of company was. And you'll probably know it when I tell you it after.
Sure.
But I find it really interesting how faith kind of drives people.
Yeah, I think for me the faith part is not about the seeing, it's about the obedience. So for me it's like I feel called to love the orphan and widow. I feel called to the for this. I mean, Madlug is my call, and in the stepping out, I am confident that even in my insecure moments, then I'm like, oh, I'm not a great leader. I have no business experience. I feel this, I feel that. But in my God moment, it's like I am so convinced that actually I don't have to have it all because it's God in me that is doing it through me.
Yeah. And what I would say about that is a lot of people don't kind of talk about faith and stuff as much these days, especially in the worlds of social media. I've seen a lot of times like Christianity and different faiths get a bit of a bashing. So it's interesting, it's really refreshing to see someone be really open about their faith and say how it does drive and motivate them. So I appreciate you doing that, and it's good to know.
I never avoid when I'm asked. I don't lead with it because it's it's not my Madlug is about providing bags and we have we're not a Christian organization in the sense that we have board members that aren't Christian, some are. We have staff who are and some aren't. So we don't, it's not like we're this little Christian organization. As a individual leader, I lead from that confidence that I have as a Christian. I'm connected to in a relationship with my Creator, and in that connection builds a confidence that basically demonstrates love through action without any other agenda.
Yeah, I find that really interesting because I know what you said, you're a Christian, but Madlug's not about that. But it's interesting to see kind of you as an individual, what makes you up and what drives you. But as you said as well, like Madlug is very diverse. And tell me a bit about that. Is it people from kind of all walks of life then get involved, in your team?
To be honest, at the very early days, you build something from your network and who you know, so it becomes very similar. And so in the earlier days, yes, we would have had young people that loved the idea and the mission of Madlug, who would have been connected through my connections in church world and stuff like that, and they would have went, oh right, love to do this. Now we are extremely we look for the right people for the right jobs, the right skill, and that is nothing, whether they're Christians or not does have nothing to do with it. And we've had quite a diverse group of people, and working in the care space across the UK, because 80% of our work is mainland UK, not Northern Ireland. So we maybe have this demographic in Northern Ireland, but actually in the UK, people will know that I'm a Christian, but actually I have a very diverse group of friends, and not people who I go and I call them my friends through association. People I go out for dinner with, people I go and meet with, people I live my life around, and so we're very much into.
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear. My podcast, I don't know if you've some of the episodes, it is quite diverse, so it's interesting to hear all different perspectives from all walks of life and faith. So I appreciate you speaking about your faith there. And then who inspires you? What we're talking about the youth work, and you've worked in that kind of industry for years. Obviously, you do Madlug. Who do you look up to in your life? I know you spoke about your mum. She seems incredible.
Yeah, so my mum passed away in 2020. Not because of COVID. She had cancer in the end, but. So she was a huge model, and the people that inspire me the most are the people who are the people in the just general that I come in contact with every day.
Yeah.
And I would say
Authentic.
authentic
Yeah.
people. And I have friends who, I grab coffee, but I've quite a wide group. And so I don't really look at the celebrity or the
Yeah.
big names or stuff like that. And that roots at that foundation part again of my I don't need that.
No. Yeah.
I'm confident in who I am.
Yeah.
And that's what matters. And so in that I have a lot of friends. Some extremely wealthy, some not. Some I don't make a difference to any of them.
Yeah, it's not about the celebrity of it all. Yeah, definitely. And then you spoke a little bit, I've heard on podcasts about, your own experience with foster care, and you're an adopted parent. But tell me a little bit about that and your kind of own experiences then with the care system.
Yeah, so for me it was whenever I was growing up, and always I dreamt about being a dad, the dad that I never had. So that was the kind of thing. And there was always something about I would love to foster or adopt. And then when I started dating my wife, she was already fostering, so she was doing respite fostering as a single girl, so that was great. And then when we decided to get married, we said, look, let's do fostering. So I went and got trained and passed all that stuff, and we did respite foster care. So we had one young person from 8 come and live with us once a month for a weekend. That young person, so we only ever fostered one child, but that 8-year-old is now 30, has 3 children, and still a huge part. So on Christmas Day, they're at our house.
Oh, wow.
And so we're really committed to the long term and the relationship, and we see that young person as part of our family.
Yeah.
And support. So that was our kind of fostering background. And again, it was we had some space in the house, so we thought, let's go and do more, which is where the story came from. And we were just looking at more fostering. But then as a result, my wife and I just felt that adoption was something. It wasn't if we can't have children. Fostering for us was, or adoption for us was something we wanted to do. And so we entered into that process. So our oldest daughter, who's now 20, came to live with us at 18 months.
Oh, wow. And then, so you kind of had that whole perspective of it then. And what's interesting to me is this all came about in 2015, but you'd had that whole background of it before. So it took a few years for the idea to come to fruition, but you've really...
Yeah.
You know the industry, you know a lot about it all.
We were never experts. I mean, my wife was probably more into it than I was. I was always for the underdog and the young person.
Yeah. I hear you say that quite a lot.
So that was who I was. In the youth centres I worked in, it was the young person most people wanted to throw out.
Yeah.
That has always been the driver. And we went to that fostering course just because children, young people in the care system, they deserve to be cared for. They deserve to be living in homes. They, not being moved about and all of that. So for us, it was just very natural to go there and say we could do more of that. But it was really interesting. The night that the video was played, my wife didn't pick up the bin bag story. So that's when I believe things are calls.
Yeah.
Because that's whenever that thing, I heard nothing else but the black bin bag.
That, yeah.
And yet my wife didn't hear it. She wasn't moved by it.
Yeah.
Which means that it was a download of a call for me to do something about. And then I was like, oh yeah, I remember it now. But it never moved.
It was probably like a fleeting thing that she said, and you probably never
Yeah,
even...
people have just passed on. But for me it was like, now this is your thing, Dave.
Yeah. And
it was like, I'm gonna do it. And I talk a lot about that in groups, when I'm doing keynotes, when I'm doing youth groups, it's find your black bin bag story.
Yeah.
It's the story within the story. It's the story that you get when you're looking at things like homelessness, when you're looking at things like poverty, those are the big stories. But the black bin bag story is the story within it. And how you find that is when you take your eyes off self and you look outside of self, and it's the focus on others rather than focus on me.
Yeah.
And you find black bin bag stories that are actually your story to run with. Now, not everybody needs to start a Madlug, because it takes a certain type of skill set and right timing. But you can go and find a charity that's doing great work and join them and volunteer for them. You can just simply, if it's the big story of elderly and you see people in your street carrying bags from the shopping, you can, your bin bag story might be, why are they carrying those plastic bags, and kind of like collapsed over with all the weight of them. Do you know what? I'll just knock a few people and say, look, can I go and get their shopping?
Yeah.
That's a black bin bag story within the bigger area of elderly care.
And go on ahead.
But that comes out of looking outside of ourselves.
Yeah. And I think you told me you were 42 when you started.
Yes.
Madlug, is that right? Before all that, did you think, I'm going to do something? Like, did you ever have that feeling, even like you walking into that talk with the girl and she was speaking about the bin bag, did you ever have that feeling like something is going to happen, I'm going to create something like this, or was it just a complete shock?
I never was driven to, because I'm not driven for stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not driven for fame. I'm not driven for any of that. I'm driven, there's a drive in me to learn.
Yeah.
And I I learn when I'm interested. So I always wanted to develop being a leader and contributing where I was, not what I could get paid for. So as a youth worker, I wanted to develop as Dave. I wanted to understand how Dave ticked, and I wanted to understand what I needed to grow in. So I consumed leadership stuff.
Yeah.
Podcasts, audiobooks. That was so school didn't work, but I became and I would have been so hungry to learn that stuff. I went to conferences to pick up stuff that was in America being taught at conference. I couldn't afford to go, and I'd be sitting in a little room with 20 people and watching it beamed in.
Yeah. Oh.
Before the days of Wi-Fi and you went and do it in your house.
Yeah.
You went to a venue and they ran a Northern Ireland version, and you're 20. And it was in those moments that I learnt stuff that actually I didn't realize I was learning the stuff for what I'm doing now.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
But it was just that hunger to learn. And it was in that moment that by 4 or 5 years before, I'd heard a guy who had founded a brand called Tom's Shoes. And he shared a story, and I was watching a little screen of him in America where he shared a story of being in South America, seeing kids that had no shoes and had $5,000. And he says, well, if I spend $5,000 and buy shoes to give those kids, where'd I get the next $5,000? But if I get $5,000 worth of shoes, sell them with a profit, that becomes sustainable, and they call it Tom's. And I thought, that's great. I became an evangelist of that brand. Never bought them because I didn't have the feet for that style of shoe. but the reality is I talked about it and just thought it's a really good idea. It was inspired.
Sometimes you can talk things into existence. I don't know if that, but I think that's interesting.
But I saw this, and then it was like, oh, bags. I want to do the same thing with bags, and that was where it all came from.
Yeah, and then I'm kind of fascinated by how you manage your time. You've got so much going on, and you're even
says you when I'm an hour late.
I wasn't gonna bring it up, but no, but seriously, that you do manage your time. It was just a mix-up, but like, how do you fit it all in?
I was talking to somebody earlier on today about this. The reality is some people ask me, are you not exhausted? Are you not stressed? You're not.
And your mind is different place because you're coming here doing this, and then you're probably going speaking to different people later.
Yeah. The thing is that I think people feel stressed because they put themselves in it and they couldn't do it or wouldn't do it. For me, I'm never stressed. I'm not never stressed is the wrong thing. I'm stressed in the wrong, when I allow things to go into the insecure Dave, that's when I become stressed. When I'm sitting here in that place of that confidence, that call, that I'm in a place where it doesn't stress me. And I have people around me, so I do have, I've realized what my weaknesses are, and I'm not afraid of getting help around that.
Yeah.
So I have a girl who is like an executive assistant to
Yep.
me on the board and manages my diary, my emails, because like when you're running around, that becomes the chaotic part.
Yeah, I
Uh,
can't even imagine how you do it
so
all.
so that's how I do it, and just I'm always on the go. But it's just who I am.
Yeah. We spoke a bit before, before we got started recording about the different spaces in your office. Tell me about those that, you're saying that you do a bit of audio work yourself, you have the photography kind of space. What is going on over there?
So we're a small team, and we've had moments. So we don't actually have a in-house video person, photograph person. They left a few months ago. But we moved offices. When you start something, it's very rock and roll. You're starting in a third floor, carrying boxes up third floors on buildings, and people give you it for free. Then we moved to like a 2,000 square foot porta cabin, and it was great inside, but it was like a porta cabin that leaked and all of that, and there was no separate space at all. But we had lots of really the inside was designed well. We could take different sections, go and stand beside certain parts and do video content, just in front of. And then last March, we grew up in many ways, and we moved from the Armagh area to Lisburn because we needed to start.
I didn't know you were in Armagh.
We started to attract the staff. We need to be closer to Belfast, and to get the next level, get experience. We also needed a building that was more attractive to invite people to, and to create a sense of more permanency rather than startup feel. So we took this little unit, small, but it's over 2 floors, and it just has a lot of rooms. And so we've kind of got a room similar like what we're sitting in today, and we've got it all done for like photography, so we can go in and do product photography shoots. We can put a sofa. We like for Christmas. We're having to think Christmas around Easter, so we set up a Christmas tree and actually created like a living room. So we went and bought out of a charity shop like a fireplace. So we've it in the place. So you start then to create those kind of spaces, so you can start to get prepared ahead season. And then we had a little room, and we're currently finishing that off to a Madlugger podcast. So we're in this year we will be launching our first podcast, which is the Madlugger podcast, and the whole idea is Madluggers, people carrying the bag. We want to invite them to apply to be on the show. And we're going to then ask them where their bags, why they carry their bags, where they're taking their bags to, and they'll meet with me in this kind of Madlugger podcast. It's kind of the whole direction we're going is the Madlugger community.
Yeah, so you'll be interviewing them then. Oh, that's such a
so
cool idea.
they get the opportunity to meet the founder. They get the opportunity to have a chat. We'll have a very standard kind of like question. Anybody. So it's not like for the celebrity, the influencer.
That's where the best stories will come from.
Get the opportunity to come on 20 minutes. Some of it may be in person, some of it will be online, because we're a national, UK brand. And maybe we do get some celebrities on who have actually bought bags, like Aisling B is one of our customers. So that's where we're going. So the more in the bag that we have currently was just like, let's do like a YouTube thing first. And then this Madlugger podcast, and then out of that, we're gonna the whole aim is to start building community around Madluggers and maybe do meetups, and so there's more than a bag. It's the bag is the connector.
And did you get the download for the name, or how did you come up with the name?
Madlug. So it was simply the download didn't come. It was the confidence of going Google. How do you create a brand? And Google said to me, you either create a new word, or you get a .com that says what you do in the tin. So like there was a brand out there that says we make websites.com. That's crazy. And or you create a new word. And I thought, being dyslexic, I can actually create new words every minute of every day. So it was then, like 123 Reds or GoDaddy. It was like, what's available in a .com address first? and then testing before I bought it what wasn't crowded. And as I started to go dignity bags, all this kind of stuff, it was all crowded, all taken. And I put in make a difference. Okay, that sounds mad. And then you lug your bag around, came to me, and luggage, Madlug. And I put that in .com, came up, madlug.co.uk came up. Then I went down to Google search and went, put it in, see how many pages it would be of stuff. To find that there was very little. There was one group that had madlug.org. They were a little American hipster Unix development group. And I knew that with no money, we could knock them off into page 3. And actually, about 2 or 3 years later, they give up the domain. We bought madlug.org as well. And that's how the name came. And it didn't necessarily land at the start because, you know, people were feeling it was a bit insensitive, you know, mad. We have a terminology in Northern Ireland where we go, you big lug. And people are like, I'm not telling my kid to wear that in school. And so it wasn't just like, that's great. But actually, it's become the key.
Did you think of that problem before when you
I did, but I'm stubborn. And, you know, the part is I'm bold enough I don't have to be popular. So that allows me to just go, okay, we'll work that out. We'll keep going. And the sales will tell. The people will connect.
It's a cool name.
And now that's the identifier. The logo that we use, a little diamond, it wasn't original. What happened was in the journals, you'll see myself creating, it was a thing like a little house, and the M and the L was like, and I thought it was pretty cool. Everybody was telling me it was great. And even designers were telling me it was great. And I met this guy that did some video work for me, and he was just graduating he did some video work as a youth worker for me. It wasn't in Madlug. And he was just graduating from a graphic design course. And I said, do you want a coffee? I met him in Lisburn. I says, here's the thing I've got this bag company going. It's called Madlug. Here's the logo. What do you think? And he looked at me straight. And he says, I wouldn't wear that on a bag. And the gut feeling of like, he was going off to work as doing his first job with Jack Wills in London. So I thought I respect him enough. But it wasn't even what he was saying. It was the gut feeling of disappointment. Because everybody, my friends, my family, everybody was telling me it was brilliant. And I thought I started to believe. I had every mock-up of bags with this on.
It was brilliant?
And he didn't think it was brilliant. He wouldn't wear it. And the learning for me was this. It wasn't that it wasn't good. It was the feeling of control that I had to let go. Because as a youth worker, you did everything. And you know, with small budget. And I knew if I couldn't let go of a logo, I would never let go of the other things. Because business is all about when a new team person, when something comes, you've got to be prepared to let go. And a lot of young guys I mentor at times, they struggle with that in business. They want to have the governance so that they can control. And I'm like, once you hire somebody, you lose control. And so for me, it was a moment of the decision of getting a logo and outsourcing it was actually this sense of letting go. And that was really hard. So I went to a group, a company in Belfast who are no longer work. They're still doing graphics, but not as this brand, called Studio Stereo. And I said, can you design a brand? They said, we'll come up with 2 ideas. You need to put 40% deposit down. 40% deposit was £480 of that £500.
And that was what you spent your £500
So
on?
40% of the deposit was the deposit of that. So it wasn't the full payment. And they came back with 2 ideas. And the one that wasn't the one we've gone with was the one I liked the best. But somebody told me in the creative space is if something you like quickly is going to be the thing that tires quickly.
Oh, that's right.
So it's like if you listen to an album that you like first listen, you'll get tired of listening to it very quickly. If it's something that takes 3, 4, 10 listens, it'll probably be around for the next 20 years listening. And so I've kind of taken that into choosing stuff is that if it jumps out, I love it. If it's something to build long term, and I went with the thing that I didn't like at first, which was Madlug, the diamond. And actually, if I'd have gone with the other one, it would have been so dated.
What was the other one?
It was like a swirly, just Madlug word. It would look great on a sweatshirt,
Yeah.
but it wouldn't have had
I
the
know what you mean.
identifiable
Yeah.
brand
Yeah.
that now our logo is that you can see it anywhere.
Yeah.
And that actually has become a key part to our brand, that we actually don't reduce that. We keep it very bold because it's a movement of identifying as we care, we see care experienced, and we believe in care experienced, and we're communicating through love without words through this brand.
Wow. And you spoke before a little bit, you said, like, you said insecure Dave, you used that. And for me to think that you could be insecure, obviously you've achieved so much, I find that even hard to believe. But how do you go into even like speaking to people? Like, is there something that you do, something that gives you confidence? Because you said as well, like, then there's a confident version of you that just kind of takes over everything. Like, you know, like you've got all these ideas. How do you get to that point?
So the it's not like I put on confidence.
Yeah.
It's the reminding of who I am.
Yeah.
The connected Dave compared to the disconnected.
Yeah.
So the connected Dave is I'm a Christian.
Yeah.
And that security comes from that. When I operate in that place, that's when the confidence, and it's not, the risk of confidence can be to the insecure, can come across as being arrogant.
Yeah.
And so then what we do is we try not to be confident because we operate in because we don't want to be seen as arrogant. So you then step back and then you operate in what's expected, which is the insecurity of, oh, I'm sorry, apologizing, doing all that stuff. But inside there's still a young boy in there.
Yeah.
That
everyone has the inner child.
That has to keep that's had no dad, that's had the trauma of all of that. And actually, you know, when you become a Christian, there's no suddenly don't move from this to this. You just move to a connected life in a relationship with God, and sometimes there's mistakes and stuff. So in that mistake or not disconnected, when I start to feel like the before God moment, I'm insecure.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, protect Dave. I've got to apologize. I've got to tell people what I'm not good at.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's about not operating out of a place of arrogance, but operating in a connected place, to a place where I do go in and speak with confidence. And I've ended up in places that are like that I just never believed. Like for instance, I have for the last 6 months was invited by 6 months ago was invited by the Minister of the Economy, Conor Murphy, to chair the Social Enterprise Action Plan strategy for Northern Ireland for the next 3 years.
Wow.
And it was just like, you know, it's one thing getting asked, and it's an honor.
Yeah.
The next thing is you're sitting in front of a team of 15 CEOs, people from Invest, people from government, people from university, professors, and they're sitting, in your room, and you're chairing it.
Yeah.
And then to the place where then you put a thing out, and then you've got to brief the committee for the economy. So on Tuesday this week, I'm sitting in Stormont being briefing the committee for the economy and getting asked all the questions about, well, are we on target? Are we going to do that?
That gives me a sense of relief to think someone like you's in Stormont, you know.
Yeah, well, I'm not doing anything. Like I feel sometimes in a place where it's like I'm not even driven for those. Like if I got another, didn't get another chair role, that's fine. It's not because I don't drive for that. It's more about. The opportunity came. I said, My thing is when the opportunity comes, you say yes, and the skills come with it. And when you're in that connected space, and that part is the key. And
when you walk into a meeting like that, then is there a kind of thing that you do? Like if you're in the disconnected version, like do you stop and take a moment and say, I need to be confident? Because I'd have that. Like even today, before speaking to you, I kind of have to go, right, I need to be confident. Do you have that or no?
I try not to be in that I have to position myself. The thing is, it's just daily posture in many ways. But the other part is I have significant people who are around me that basically will challenge. So if I went and says, "Oh, I'm really struggling, I'm doing this," and they'll not say, "Oh, Dave, feel for you and you could do this and fix it." They'll go, "Dave, you're just disconnected. You need to connect." and and they'll challenge me on that, and they'll you know, and stuff, and that's how I stay.
I think I'm actually really going to take that advice on, you know, that being connected advice. I think I'll really remember you saying that. And just finally, what would be your advice to someone who's gotten that download of information, that idea, who thinks, I have no idea how I'm going to do this? What is your advice?
My advice is this: whenever I had the idea, and I was inspired by Tom's shoes with the model, I read very slowly, because I'm not a great fast reader, the book that the founder of Tom's wrote. And in it, there's a line that says, "Don't let the someday take your dreams to the grave. If it's so important to you, just do it, and the course will work itself out." And that made me think that Dave at 42 had plenty of other times that I let the someday take the dream.
Yeah.
And so if somebody has been moved, providing somebody has found their black bin bag story, the story within the story, once you've got that and you've an idea on how to fix that and do something about it, don't let that someday take your dreams. And that's not my words. It's from the founder of Tom's Shoe. But that's what so at 42, the someday's not going to rob this one, because it robbed many. And I took the start, and the money was there for the deposit, but then the money followed, because money always follows the vision.
Thank you so much, Dave. I was really inspired by everything you had to say. I've nearly forgotten the time, but thank you so much. I've really appreciated it.
It's been brilliant to be here, and it's better to do these things in person than on Zoom. So thanks for having me on your podcast.
Thank you so much, and thank you to anybody who is listening to the podcast. Please reach out if you have anybody inspiring or interesting that you would like me to get on the podcast. I'm looking for really authentic, amazing stories. Let me know. Thank you so much, Dave.